Brother Terry Dowling here to talk to us about the Christian Brothers. We have been learning about the Christian Brothers in our student leadership course, and I'm sure he'll provide some interesting insight to the brothers. I know he doesn't want us to talk about him for long, but he's an amazing man who deserves to be admired, so we would like to talk a little bit more about him.
At around the age of 15, Brother Terry moved to Stellenbosch, to where the current Christian Brothers Center is. He moved here to become a brother. He is a devoted Christian who comes from a family of devoted Christians. His brother is also a brother, Brother Kevin Dowling, who is the bishop at Rustenburg.
Brother Terry was extremely athletic, especially with his hockey. He has run the Two Oceans and Comrades Marathon, was an avid mountain biker, and has hiked across the UK. He is a true action man. He is a gifted scientific person. He also studied at Stellenbosch University and has 2 master degrees. He even taught maths here at CBC for a year.
Brother Terry is extremely passionate about saving the environment and deeply believes in eco-spirituality. He was heavily involved in making Stellenbosch eco-friendly. He is a good man and is always thinking for the future. He cares deeply about everyone and everything. He has a huge heart and is loving and caring with everyone he meets. Please welcome Brother Terry.
Can I talk like this? Okay, good morning, everyone. And thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Mrs. Van Vuren. Thank you, Mrs. Lewis. And thank you, the 4 of you. Thomas, Lena, so we haven't got your names, okay. It's when you get to my age that you forget names, okay. So don't believe all that stuff, okay. It's a myth. Thank you for that introduction, okay. I've been asked to speak a little bit about the history of the brothers in South Africa and Zimbabwe. Now, you all know Edmund Rice's story. 1802, he started schools for street kids in Waterford in Ireland. Basically, he was a very rich man in export and import of stuff to Canada, shipping trade, meat, etc. It was his uncle's business. But his wife had died. He had a daughter he had to care for, a special needs daughter. But he looked out of his window from his house and he was challenged by another lady friend to look at those street kids and do something about that. And he knew the only way out of that was education. And that's how his schooling started. And even in his own lifetime, the brothers had moved from Ireland and had started schools in England. But the brothers came to Africa, first of all, to Kimberley in the diamond fields. If you read up the history of the diamond fields in those days, there were a lot of Irish people there, and there was a pub on every corner of the road, etc. A scramble for diamonds, etc. But the brothers came in 1897, over many years ago. There were 3 of them. They started in a house, and St. Patrick Kimberley is still going today, with nearly 1,000 kids in it all over the place. Wonderful to see that it's going. So that was the very first foundation, and that lasted for quite a few years. And then in 1922, the brothers were asked to start a school in Pretoria. That school started near the university. That campus was swallowed up by the university, and now it's Edmund Rice School, Edmund School, just out on near the CSIR in Pretoria. A campus. It was a boarding school, but now it's just a day school. In 1935, there were 2 further establishments, CBC Greenpoint and CBC Boksburg. As you know, Greenpoint closed down around 2002, and the campus moved here to CBC Parklands, and St. John's is going like a fire. Okay, so wonderful. CBC Boksburg is still on the same campus, It's a campus of boys only. There's a very strong convent in Boksburg, St. Dominic's Convent. So it's just one of our few boys-owned schools. Other foundations, and I'll just mention them. CBC Springs started in 1964 as an outreach of CBC Boksburg, but it's grown into a full-blown campus. And in 1992, we amalgamated that school with St. Dominic's Convent, a Dominican convent in Springs, and it became Veritas College. CBC Bloemfontein, we started in 1940. CBC Welcome was started in 1957. Again, it amalgamated with the convent in 1996, and it became St. Dominic's College. The brothers in Kimberley, way back in 1934, 1935, two of the brothers went into Galashiwa Township and worked in the Catholic primary school there. That was our first venture into township education, way back in the 1930s. They kept on going, and eventually we started a high school in Kimberley, in Galashiwa Township, called St. Boniface High School. That was 1951. We also started a school in CBC Bulawayo, 1954, and that's still going very, very well. The Cape Town brothers started in 1935, and then in 1940 and 1941, they traveled by bus and by train, and they started a primary school in Woodstock and a high school for colored boys in 1941, St. Columba's High School. It was one of the first high schools for colored boys in those years. And the brothers used to travel for at least 10 years by train every morning to get to school and travel back again. Quite a slip just to do that. We had to get special permission to establish a house in a colored area in those apartheid years. Unfortunately, St. Columba's, we had to close in 1997 because of financial troubles and all sorts of things. So the brothers are no longer there. But there's still a school there. And if you go there, you'll see the old little gate on the side of the street, St. Columba's High School. But it's a Muslim school now. Amazing. And if you go there, you'll see the young ladies beautifully dressed with their blue veils over their heads. Just wonderful. Education is still going. We withdrew from Woodstock many years ago because we couldn't do that anymore. But the school is still used by St. Agnes Primary School. Now the Christian Brothers own 9 schools now, from Bulawayo down to Cape Town, and we still are the trustees of those. But the brothers over the years worked in many, many other schools, mostly in township education. We worked from the 1950s in St. Mary's and St. Bernard's in Botshabelo Township outside Bloemfontein. We established in 1969, 1970, a boys' boarding school in Tweespruit near Tobanshu on the eastern side of the eastern borders of the Free State. That school is still going. We don't own these schools, they're owned by the bishop. We worked for at least 15 years in Diepkloof in Soweto, running Immaculata High School. We worked in a little town called Flagstaff in the Eastern Cape for many years in a primary school. And then we moved to Kokstad in the Eastern Cape and helped in the Catholic Education Office there for quite a few years. One of the biggest ones we worked in was when Rhodesia became independent and became in Zimbabwe. There were 2 huge mission schools on the border of Zimbabwe and Botswana. And Mugabe threatened that the army would take those over unless the church opened those schools again. And the brothers were asked from Bulawayo to move up there. So 2 brothers went from Bulawayo and opened that school right on the border of right in the bush, called Mbakwe High School. It's a boarding school for boys. It is still going, but the brothers are no longer there. I've traveled quite a few times up there. I was in leadership for 6 years of the brothers here. And you'd go into the bush and travel across riverbeds for 2 riverbeds, etc., and eventually get into the bush of this school. And these mission schools were huge complexes. There used to be a clinic, a farm, but now the local church finds it very difficult to take on all that because the missioners are no longer there. And then we also worked in a little village in Namibia called Ses, just south of Keetmanshoop. Now, I want you to imagine the smallest little Karoo dorp. And this is what Ses looks like, just a couple of little houses and a little school and a clinic. And the brothers worked in that school. Now, sadly, we have withdrawn from most of these things. We're not in those schools. We've run a few projects, and I want to mention those. The Brothers' House in Woodstock, we ran a refugee project there for at least 20 years. I had to close it up. I was there for 8 years till 2010. The house, we'd have at least 3 ladies off the street with their children and refugees. The ladies and the kids on the bottom story, the brothers and the refugees, mostly from Angola or Congo. And they were mostly involved in security work, coming in all that. I lived there with them. We shared the same table, everything. And I taught at Maitland High School, science and maths, to try get some funding to run the project. But we just couldn't keep that going. We ran a drop-in school in Gelashiwe in Kimberley Township, Tutong Yobana, where street kids would just drop in to come to school. They weren't in informal education. Sadly, we've had to close that also. And then one of the brothers who was principal in Greenpoint, Brother Chalmers, has been working in the Catholic Biblical Foundation for many, many years, and he's still doing that. So that gives you a little overview of what our brothers were involved in over the years. When I joined the brothers way back in 1961, at the age of 15 going on 16. Now, what the hell did I know about life? Anyway, it was cradle snatching in those years. Our training house was at, as you mentioned, out in Stellenbosch. It was an old disused farm. We got that in 1949. And I did my standard 9 and 10, or your grade 11 and 12, as you know now. And then I trained I did a BSc degree in maths and science and chemistry, and I taught maths and science most of my life. That center has morphed into, we've got no brothers joining since the late 80s. So we've developed it into a retreat and spirituality center, and there's a youth center there, and some of your people have been out there, and the teachers have been out there. So when I joined in the 60s and 70s, there were about 110 brothers in Zimbabwe and South Africa. We are down to 8 now. That's all. And I am in the middle in the age group. So what are the brothers doing? We serve on boards of governors, Catholic Board of Education governors. We are trustees to 9 of the schools. And we also serve as trustees, one of the trustees of Girls and Boys Town, South Africa, a very interesting project. And you might say, oh, gosh, that's very sad. No, it's not sad. The brothers have done their job, and these schools are still going under the leadership of fantastic teachers, men and women, carrying on the charism of Edmund. It is just absolutely wonderful. And you will learn of the whole network of schools throughout the world. There's over 300, isn't there, Sharon? Under Edmund Rice Education Beyond Borders. Students from all different backgrounds, different cultures, different religions, all under this umbrella of Edmund Rice Education. Absolutely wonderful. Some of your students have traveled to Australia, to India. Okay, isn't that wonderful? We get the leaders of our 9 schools together and some of the diocesan schools every year. Unfortunately, with COVID, we haven't done that last year, and we're hoping to meet in September at the center in Stellenbosch for this year. And Edmund Rice Education Beyond Borders, our leaders, the principals, the heads of these schools have traveled twice to England and Ireland, Latin America, Montevideo and Buenos Aires, to Peru, to India, to Australia, to Livingston, to Nairobi, just to see the wider expanse of all our schools. And that is wonderful. So that's one of the challenges I want to throw before you. You're doing a leadership model. What is leadership about? And unfortunately, the powerful men of the world don't portray good leadership. It's all about gaining power, gaining attention, gaining money, getting rich. True leadership is about serving the community. And I want you to think of three people: Jesus of Nazareth, Edmund Rice, Nelson Mandela. True leadership. I want to use a story from the gospel. Jesus and his disciples feeding the thousands of people when they were hungry. And what did Jesus say to his disciples? Sit all of them down, all of them. Include all of them. Don't exclude anybody. Get the food that everybody's got and share it amongst everybody. And when they've all eaten, gather up what is left behind so that there is no waste. Think of that. Inclusivity. Everybody, no matter who they were, got something. And then they didn't waste anything. I want you to think Edmund Rice did exactly that. Nelson Mandela's outlook was exactly that. Include everybody. Not some, not the other. And unfortunately, in our own country, we have a very big social divide, as you know. I want you to look out of your window now on the world as you see it. What you are going into. What are the biggest challenges facing you? And immediately you can speak about COVID, how it's increased the social divide in our own country of haves and have-nots. There is climate change. There is an incredible amount of social unrest. And this is throughout the world. But these are symptoms of bigger problems deeper down. And my challenge to you is to try and understand why there are these things. I'm quite sure some of you take biology, correct? I'm an outdoors guy. I hike and I do all these stupid things, okay? And my mother said to me one day, when are you going to grow up? When I was doing something stupid, running up a mountain, etc. But anyway, it's adventure. Lovely. But you look at a good ecosystem. There are all sorts of different plants, different insects, different animals, etc. And there is no waste. We are the only biological beings who create waste. So I want you to challenge you that when you go out, this is the model of leadership. Include everybody. The human dignity of every person must be upheld as loved by God. And when you become a lawyer or an engineer or whatever, a farmer, an entrepreneur, a teacher, a nurse, a doctor, an economist, we've got to challenge the present economic, political, social, religious systems. They're not solving our problems. Inclusivity, equity, inclusivity, everybody. And then we've got to live in harmony with our world. Closed loop productions. We can't have linear productions where we just create waste. And these are you've got all the technologies ahead of you. So I congratulate you on your Edmund Rice leadership. Thank you for inviting me, and I hope you learned a little bit or I said something that might challenge you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Brother Terry, for coming out here today. We would really like to thank you from the bottom of our heart for coming all the way here and educating us as future leaders about how to do things further. On behalf of the Student Leadership Group, we would like to thank you with a small little gift. And I hope you get well. Just be amazing. Thank you so much for coming here today. We really appreciate it.